1. I took my escape to the local Ford shop outside the dealership to get my oil changed. I go in, and I sort of vaguely know the guy behind the counter. I tell him what I need. He says it'll be about 45 minutes total. Cool. I'll wait in their little waiting area. I barely got myself sat down when an older lady rushes in, and for reasons completely unknown to me, starts complaining about gas pump 3. But she's the type that is flighty and going to keep talking right on over you. So she starts talking. "Oh, I'm sorry, I manage to say before she goes on and on about the little hook thingy on the end of the deal, you know. And she can't get it to go, but that little hook thingy, etc., etc. I know nothing about gas pump maintenance, but her rapid-fire, meandering descriptions weren't doing anyone any favors. An overly excitable parakeet came to mind. Sensing the briefest of lulls in her ramblings, I said, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Naturally, she starts chirping again as I'm saying the word work. She's looking off in every direction, at every person waiting for their cars, at the guy behind the counter just chittering away, saying a lot without ever really saying anything, you know? Mostly this is directed at me, but she's pivoting her head and just talking to the whole room. There was nothing wrong with her, just one of those elder Karens who emote a level 10 fret over a level 2 issue. She ends it all by looking directly at me and saying, "So, pump 3, thank you." And she walks back out to her car at the gas pump. Guy at the counter needs some more info from me because since the last time I was there, I got a new car but also moved. After our exchange, I kind of patted the counter forcefully and said, as if I were his boss, "And if one of you could get on pump 3, that'd be great." We had a chuckle, and I sat back down. Lady comes parakeeting up toward the door again, and I took a deep breath, ready to tell her that I don't work there. She doesn't come in, but looks directly at me sitting in a chair, then parakeets back to her car and stands there. A mechanic came in from the shop. Guy behind the counter tells him the story as best as he could, with what little information the lady gave. He says he'll take a look ASAP. They were busy. It was 2 days before Thanksgiving, assuming people were getting their cars checked before travel. Also, it had just snowed, so maybe winterization. And I also don't think they knew there was a lady actually out there. I can see her pacing around like a maniac, craning her neck and looking at the storefront. Counter guys run ragged booking new people in and going over the bills with others they had finished. Cue me getting an important phone call about my disabled mother's SSI benefits. It was just a number, so I answered it inside. But once I realized its importance, I took it outside. As I'm getting the SSI rep to hold on a second, lady comes back in and looks at me with daggers in her eyes. She's simply aghast. I make it a point to tell the SSI rep that I was at the shop getting my car worked on. Something that would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Let them know why I needed a sec, and let Parakeet know that I don't work there. As I'm walking out the door, I hear her just exclaim, "And now he's just on the phone, unbelievable!" She storms out after me. I think because she thinks I'm heading to her car in pump 3, obviously I'm not. I continue off the property, across the small access road and into the empty lot next door. I take the call with delicate professional information while also having a cigarette. I figured. All in all, I'm, 100 feet away. Lady starts storming my direction, getting about halfway there, and throws up her arms in disgust, like she's waiting for me to notice her. Finally, she turns on her heels and stomps back to her car, paces around it, stares at me, looks at the store. Finally, one of the mechanics goes out there. I obviously couldn't hear them, and I was preoccupied with my call anyway. I did see them do something at the pump, which took a millisecond, and the rest of the time she was clearly angrily animated, talking at him while gesturing and occasionally looking at me. She fills up her car and leaves by the access road I crossed. I get daggers from her as she drives past me. I get done with my call and go back in. The mechanic and the counter guy are both talking, so I asked what her deal was. She didn't pull up the little lever that would activate the gas pump. She was just trying to pump gas to no avail. Facepalm. But the mechanic goes, "She really hates you." He goes on to say how she read him the riot act over me. I was lazy, incompetent, and more preoccupied with my phone and going on break than I was with helping her. She ended it with demanding I be fired, or she take her business elsewhere. Counter guy says, "So, sorry, but we're gonna have to let you go." Damn, we laughed hard about that. 2. This happened a year ago. I recently left this store that it happened in, and was reminded of it today while sharing stories with colleagues. I was working checkouts at a supermarket in the UK. Across the country, you can find a mix of loose and packs of apples in our stores, from Braeburn, Granny Smith, Gala, and Pink Ladies. If someone came to the till with loose apples, we had to weigh them to get the price, as it was done per kilo. Corporate cracked down on the checkouts. As Braeburn and Gala's, the most common bought apples, were the same price, $2.10 per kilo, we would dump the lot on the scales and put it under one, rather than separate them out, as this took up time, and people complaining that they got them from the same crate. This was understandable, due to how the trays were displayed, for a few apples to fall into different ones or customers putting them back in the wrong one. However, Pink Ladies and Granny Smith were a higher value, $3.20 per kilo. Corporate enforced a policy on the apples to be weighed separately. They believed that if we were doing this with the cheap apples, we could be letting higher value apples through the net. Anyone found not to be checking apples in weight differently would be punished. This gentleman came to my till with his son. His son was happily babbling away about how they were there to see his uncle and cousins in the area. We were happily chatting about the places for them to check out, until we got to the large bag of apples. I briefly looked at it and spotted 2 Pink Ladies mixed in. The moment I started opening the bag, the father, now our ED, began to go ballistic. "What are you doing that for? Don't touch them!" "You have a few Pink Ladies mixed in, I have to weigh them separately." "I got them from the same crate. Stop touching them with your filthy hands." Germophobia? I was a little ticked at his attitude, but calmly explained the policy, and how this sometimes happened, and it's no fault of his own. He was having none of it, especially when one of the 2 offending apples was just a normal Gala like the rest, but with a Pink Lady sticker half stuck to it. "Can you believe this? I'm being ridiculed here over one stupid apple." His yelling caught the attention of everyone around us. His ranting caught the attention of my supervisor. But they did nothing, waiting for me to press a button from the till if I needed help. His friend that was on the till behind him asked what was going on. I explained again to ED and his friend that I have to weigh them separately, even going as far as to explain the price difference, even giving him the option of us getting him another apple of the same type, which he refused as he chose the best of the bunch. "You're clearly not smart, otherwise you would have gone to university and gotten a proper job." "I have a degree, thanks, an art degree, but still a degree." "Then why are you working here, then?" He throws his hands up in the air as if to emphasize this. "Well, apparently you need a degree to tell the difference between a Pink Lady and a Gala." He went silent, paid and left, with his son looking at me apologetically, but leaving the Pink Lady left on her own. My supervisor put the apple back and told me I did a good job handling the rude man. Not 3 minutes later, ED's friend came back to my till with the very same apple and a crunchy, and didn't speak a word. From what I remember, ED's apples came to $2.15-ish, and the Pink Lady was 82 pence. 3. I worked for years in retail before switching careers. I went from dealing with people who asked for items based entirely on what the people in said items commercial were wearing, to teaching children. And this is one story that makes me think the children are by far the smarter breed. For a while, I worked as a trainer for a very popular cell phone company. I would regularly visit cellular carriers and do events for customers and train employees. So I was almost always dressed very well. The most dressed down I ever got was a polo, dress pants, and dress shoes, because I wanted to give a good and professional impression. However, my style of dress came with the greatest Karen bait known to man, a silver name tag. Beyond the hundreds of times I was mistaken for an employee while at the stores, this story takes place while I went grocery shopping after work one evening. That should be enough background, so on with the actual story. I'd finished up later than usual and was browsing the groceries for the next couple of days at a semi-supermarket whose logo is a bullseye. I had a cart with several frozen items my wife loves, some snacks for my son, some dog food for my dog, and various other small things to carry me through. I was browsing some spices, debating on if I had enough of a few kinds to make chili, when I hear a faint noise behind me. I squeeze in a bit closer, trying to be sure I'm not blocking the aisle. No sense in being rude, right? A second or two go by and my spider sense begins to tingle, and then, dear listener, I hear the dreaded sound that in the retail wilds is both terrifying and amusing, depending on how far away you're standing.
Excuse me?
Ah, yes, the mating call of the wild Karen. I turn around and see a specimen of at least 40 years, trying desperately to be mistaken for her own daughter, in what I can only assume was a pair of yoga pants, furry boots, a shirt that was strategically unbuttoned, and a huge pair of sunglasses acting as a solar panel for her "let me speak to your manager" haircut. My desperate plea for clemency in the form of her own ability to notice a mistake came immediately as I pushed my cart further away and swept my arm where I was standing. Sorry, didn't know I was blocking you. But alas, this story would not have made it here if that was all she needed. No. Karen did not want to graze the spice rack. She had used her cosmic powers on me without realizing, you see, because now I was no longer shopping for dinner. I had been granted employment. And Karen was not pleased at my performance so far.
No, I need you to help me find Soylent Green.
I'm a smartass by nature, you can tell, and my wife often jokes that I'm paid well to tell people where they can stick it and to make them happy to hear it. But these skills are lost on the wild Karen. So is the fact that the store uniform is khakis and a red shirt, while I'm in a blue and white dress shirt, dress pants, and wearing a company logo jacket that doesn't look remotely like an employee's. I decide to assume she's perhaps dazzled in the bright lights without her solar panel glasses guarding her beady eyes. So I smile politely, say, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Our eyes narrow, looking like the shining black of a shark. And the games have now begun.
You're wearing a uniform, don't give me that. You can put up that garbage when you're done doing your job.
My eyebrow raises in my head. I hear the ringside bell. Okay, Karen. Game on. So in my best, I really don't hope you're run over by a stray water buffalo voice. And smile, I say, "What was it you needed helping finding, ma'am?" I see the flinch. I said ma'am and she didn't like it. Don't show weakness now, we've only started. But in the same condescending tone she wails,
I need Soylent Green. Now show me to it.
I nod and pushed my buggy along as I head to the rear of the store. She doesn't look pleased that I'm bringing the buggy, but if she says anything, she does so under her breath, and I know soon enough she'll have plenty to complain about. So I savor the moment where the only sound is the slap, slap of her boots ricocheting off the floor and on the heels of her feet inside. I walk several aisles. After dozens, she starts to huff and puff, and I can hear the faintest grumbling about why it was so hidden away and why did she have to walk so far, etc. Not directed at me, but I'm not deaf, so I can hear her childish tantrums just fine. Thank God she can't see the evil smile on my face. Passing the last row of groceries, I hang a left. Passing seasonal, candies, luggage, travel, etc. She's behind me in such a blurry huff of muttering anger. I didn't know if she's questioning the marital status of my parents, the life choices that brought her here, or both. But she's not happy, and it sounds more and more like a car that won't start, and less like a person talking to themselves. As we reach the book section, I wheel the cart right over and start down an aisle. Now the Karen is really angry.
Where the hell are you going? I'm looking for Soylent Green. If you're too stupid to find it, then maybe I should be talking to your manager.
This is drawing a crowd from the nearby electronics section. My plan is working better than I'd hoped. I stop in front of the small children's section and grab a thin copy of what's basically a toddler's first spelling book. A few letters playing with a small child on the cover, and a title about learning the first few letters of the alphabet. Perfect. Walking back to the red-faced Karen, I offer the book. I don't say anything. I just extend my arm, showing her the cover. Like most people would, she takes the offered book, looks at it, looks at me, and basically growls,
What the hell is this? Are you stupid? Where's your manager? You're absolutely awful.
Her wailing has attracted at least 2 employees who seem to recognize the whiny wails of the retail native Karen. One is on a small radio calling who I assume is the manager, while another is coming our way with that terror in their eyes that only an entitled middle-aged woman with an attitude problem can cause. With a smile, I gesture to the book in her hands and say in my absolute best customer service voice, "Actually, ma'am, I thought that since you can't tell the difference between a customer and an employee, you must not be able to read, so I figured this book can help." Stunned silence. The poor hamster that was responsible for the complex operation of powering the Karen was working overtime, so when the employee finally makes it to us, they're unaware of what I said, only that I was smiling in a customer service kind of way. Karen was still all mouth agape at what I said. When they tried a polite greeting, "Hello, is there something I can help with tonight?" Karen was livid. She proceeded to throw the book at me, literally and figuratively, and start screaming. I dodged the book, and her howls of rage wound up.
"How dare you talk to me that way? I want this man's manager right now. He needs to be fired."
Oh no, she still didn't get the point. Maybe I should have started with an easier book. Dr. Seuss? Maybe something on tape. She hasn't slowed down. Is cussing like a rabid honey badger on PCP. And somewhere in that string of expletives were words that vaguely made a caveman-type sense. Short phrases, mostly. The employee is trying desperately to put out the fire that is Karen. Her face is so red I swear smoke is coming from that horrible dye job. And the distant employee on the walkie-talkie is obviously begging for a manager. Or a priest. I step back, away from any flailing pieces, and just wait politely, taking a second to text my wife that I was held up, and to expect a good story when I get home. Her response, because she knows me, "What did you do now?" I love that woman. When the manager arrives, they must have been fresh out of priests, the woman is pulled to the side and he speaks to her, trying to calm her down. The employee standing near me looks at me and with a bewildered look asks, "What happened?" Not wanting to spoil the punchline, I just kind of made a face and softly said, "Didn't the haircut clue you in?" Big mistake. The employee chirps with laughter, he quickly chokes off. I don't think he expected me to know the dorsal plumage of the wild Karen. But Karen has heard the sound and went from slowly lowering to a shrill string of complaining, back to seething anger. Once again, she all but frothed at the mouth. After another few minutes, the manager gets her to step aside and comes over to talk to me. He begins asking all sorts of questions she obviously decided to embellish. "Why did you call her?" "Deleted, I didn't actually say." "Did you throw a book at her?" "Were you following her?" Things like that. Things that could be claimed with only the loosest concept of reality. So in a pleasant voice I explained how I was shopping, and she demanded I show her where an item was, and refused to accept I didn't work here. This caused the manager to frown as he looked at me. He saw how I was dressed, and I think some light in his eyes actually died, probably realizing he had to actually think worse of humanity than just 5 minutes ago, and it took another piece of his soul with it. I've been there. So I smile and nod as I see him reason out that I was basically kidnapped to find something for this woman, and all the tumblers in his mind seem to fall into place. He must have seen this type of thing often enough to know what happened, or close enough. But I nod and say, since she can't read and might be colorblind, I gave her a book on the alphabet instead. I figured if she knew how to read it would fix all her problems. She threw the book at me, cussed like a sailor, and wants you to fire me. Maybe I should have gotten something in crayon. The employee standing nearby is done for. He begins to laugh hysterically, full belly laughs that sent him retreating for a door to their back room nearby. Even as he fades from sight, I can still hear the echoes of his laughter. The manager, a seasoned veteran of the retail wars it seems, manages to make his initial chuckle sound like a disapproving grumble at the retreating employee. By the way his face scrunched up, I know full well that he found it at least reasonably funny. Karen is mad that the employee is laughing, having at least the sense to know she is the butt of the joke, even if she didn't hear said joke. So score 1 for her situational awareness. So she starts over to us while the poor manager's soul begins to wither inside him. She's in full complain mode. Corporate this, I know X person that. It all sounds like the teacher from Peanuts if you've been in actual retail before. Turning with an admirably straight face, the manager holds up a hand and silences her through his weird Karen charming powers. "Ma'am, Again, her eye twitches. I'm gonna have to ask that you stop harassing other shoppers and keep the volume down. A vein in her forehead begins to leap from the skin and do a little dance as she winds herself up for another tirade.
He was the one harassing me.
She almost reaches around him, jabbing her $2.99 press-ons at me like the predatory talons she wishes they were. The manager, not happy with basically having her almost trying to wrap herself around him to get to me, holds up his hands and in a very firm voice says, "Ma'am, you need to calm down. If you can't, then I'll have to ask you to leave." The blubbering, incoherent Karenisms that follow don't translate well to text. And if I had thought I could get away with it, I would have recorded it with my phone. As it was, she protested, swore, threatened, and actually raked her arm down a shelf in a tantrum, knocking down almost everything as she screamed at the manager. And that's when I knew what was coming. She wasn't going to be asked to leave. Oh no. At this point, she was about to become a captive audience. The manager called for someone in the clothing department and overwalked two women who, God bless them, managed to wrangle the woman and began escorting her to the front. The employee who'd walked away laughing came over and escorted me back to the grocery and told me that she was going to be detained and barred from the store. He was in a good mood, except maybe having to clean up her tantrum, and we joked about the last vessel of stupid we'd been graced to see. A few minutes later I checked out and was walking to the door when two police walked in, rather annoyed looking. I left with a smile on my face. Moral of the story, kids, never inflict yourself on random people and assume they have to put up with your BS. You never know when you'll meet the crocodile hunter of Karens. 4. So this happened a while ago when I was working at a technical appliance store. It was pretty big. I worked at the checkout most days. The store had a lot of events like get 10% if you bring your customer card, and similar stuff. One time there was a 15% discount. Enter HRL, hellishly rude lady, and her two boys who looked like normal early 20s and late teens. They buy two very, and I mean very high-end notebooks, and some accompanying gadgets and bags, which they proceed to put on the counter separately. I ask them if they have a customer card, and they say one of them does, and I propose to put their notebooks in one purchase because obviously I can't give a discount to the one that doesn't have the card, and I didn't want him to pay €200 too much. So I start scanning everything in, and it takes a while because all expensive things have the black blob of anti-thievery on them that I have to unlock first with a special key. I'm trying to hurry because there are two counters open and there are a lot of customers waiting to pay and making annoyed sounds and faces. Then all of a sudden, HRL leans closer and screams in my face. She asks me in a smattering of 3 languages, none of which are the language of the country we're in, and I hear the word discount, so I say that I have already taken it off. I continue to scan while she screams at her sons, who in turn very shyly and embarrassed ask me if I have taken the discount off. I again say yes. I scan the rest of it and name the price. She again screams for something discount. I say yes, looking at the horde of people waiting in line. Then HRL goes to the other open counter, who keeps looking over to see if everything is alright. Because obviously my line isn't getting along at all, and HRL makes her come out of the booth and walk over. In case you don't know, when you close a counter you need to ensure that no one can get at the money. So you lock in the cash and you block the register system, and then you lock the booth. And you also close off the space after the counter. My colleague comes over looking stressed because she thought I'd made a mistake or something. I was pretty new. HRL screeches in her face about a discount. My colleague takes one look at the register and says that the discount has been taken off and runs off to her own counter. I take the money that the sons put down, very proudly saying that they saved it up from their jobs, and send them off. Later I am called to the information center, and whom do I see? HRL screaming that I was rude and that I did not take off the discount, despite it being clearly visible on the check. The shift manager asks me what happened. I tell her everything. She calls my colleague to corroborate my account and later proceeds to tell HRL that she is wrong and in no way obliged to continue shopping at our store if she continues to treat the workers like that. I doubt HRL understood what she said, but she left at least, and I was able to go back to my line of customers that is stretched out to almost in the middle of the store. 5. The following is an update to a story featured in a previous video. The WK of the story had harassed our hero at both his job and while outside shopping on their own. This is the update. The characters J, Judge, me, P, Police Officer, WK, you know who. So all this happened yesterday. I can honestly say that I feel good. The sense of justice feels good. So I come back to tell you all what will hopefully be the finale of this particular story. I had to call out work for this, as I was ready to never see this woman again. I came fully prepared with solid evidence and statements from multiple people who were in Walmart that fateful night. That and getting this evidence was a hassle. I walked into that courtroom with a suit and tie and sat down where I was told to. Moments later, WK walks in with P on her tail. WK sat down in her designated spot and started looking around the room when her eyes landed on me. Oh boy, if she was Medusa, I would be nothing but a statue. She glared at me till P addressed the court. All rise for Honorable Judge Hang'em High. J sits. You may be seated. I hereby announce that this court is in session. Looks like we have a classic case of assault, OP versus WK. Now, is there any evidence of this occurrence? Yes, Your Honor. With your permission, I would like to present it to the court, I say. J nods. Proceed, OP. I handed P the notebook and the flash drive I had brought with me. P passed it to the judge. As Judge reviewed the notebook, he had told P to get the projector ready for the flash drive. Once that was finished, we all reviewed the footage and could clearly see that it was WK that assaulted me. After it was done, Jay looks at WK and her lawyer. I have a lawyer too, but I didn't add them to the story. Anything on the defensive? Her lawyer was about to say something, but WK cut in.
That man sexually assaulted me.
Madam, that is a serious claim. Do you have any evidence to prove that Mr. OP is guilty?
Well, no.
I see. Then you are overruled.
What do you mean, overruled? Do you know who I am?
Order!
I am...
Big company owner's wife.
Order in the court!
WK shuts up.
Another outburst like that, madam, and I will not hesitate to give you the maximum sentence. Do you understand me?
WK nods.
Good. Then by the order of the court, I hereby sentence Miss WK to 4 years in prison and 2 years probation. Following your sentence in prison, you will take anger management classes. And hereby never allowed to have contact with Mr. OP again. Court dismissed.
Jay thuds his gavel. Once again, if you got this far, you deserve a gold in my book, kind strangers. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail 76. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And special thanks to the author of the last story there for giving us the update. Much appreciated. I did consider putting it in the next episode of Eager Legals, given that it was a court case related thing, but I figured since it started in fast food and retail, then that is logically where it should conclude. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.